I knew the air was turning sour the second the lobby receptionist handed me a visitor badge with the word expired printed across the front. Not my name, not even temp, just expired. Like the building itself had already made up its mind. 11 years of holding Muradyne together through layoffs, pivots, and two separate rebrands, and suddenly I was just a dusty milk carton in HR's back fridge. I was still adjusting my blazer when Kaya Levant strutted through the mirrored glass doors like she was auditioning to play CEO Barbie in some dystopian knockoff. Skin-slick suit, clunky heels that clacked like an execution drumroll, and that smug little smirk that screamed I Googled leadership on the plane. She didn't look at me when she passed. Didn't need to. I'd been in this game long enough to recognize a hatchet behind a handshake. They called an emergency leadership meeting at 10:15. Not even a full bagel into the welcome breakfast. I thought I'd be introducing her to the ops team, maybe walking her through the Q4 risk mitigation plan. Instead, I walked into the boardroom to find half the C-suite already seated like they were waiting for a magic trick. Kaya stood at the head, arms crossed, expression pure linked in bravado. Before we get started, she chirped. There's a small matter of realignment. I didn't even sit down. She turned to me with the dramatic flair of someone who thought cruelty was a leadership style. Rachel Connolly, your time here has been appreciated, but we're ushering in a new era. And that era doesn't include legacy roles. Someone actually gasped. Like this was a live soap opera, and I'd just been pushed down a flight of narrative stairs. Kaya tilted her head, all faux empathy and PR polish. Thank you for your service, but your time is over. I didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared at her like I was watching a toddler play with power tools. I'd buried three bosses more competent than her and built the very infrastructure she was now too arrogant to understand. But you can't teach calculus to a goldfish, so I smiled, tucked my badge into my purse, and said, then I guess I won't waste your time. No one moved, no one breathed. I turned and walked out, the silence behind me thicker than the breakroom lasagna after an all-nighter deployment. Elevator doors closed behind me, and only then, did I allow my lips to twitch. Because I knew something Kaya didn't. The ink on the closing prep was still wet, and I had a 3 p.m. with the one group she should have never underestimated. But we'll get to that. Real quick, though, before we dive any deeper into this mess of betrayal, power plays, and cold revenge served through legally binding PDFs, take a second to subscribe and like this story. 90% of y'all forget, and it really keeps the team going while we dig through this corporate chaos. Plus, you don't want to miss what happens next. Trust me. Anyway, back to the elevator. As I descended 14 floors of polished steel and poor decisions, my phone buzzed. Calendar alert, closing prep 3 o'clock p.m., Caro Equity private room. I didn't need to open it. I knew what it meant. Caro Equity wasn't just a private equity fund. It was the scalpel I'd spent the last 6 months sharpening behind the curtain. While Kaya was off doing vision quests with McKinsey Rejects, I was helping draft a quiet, leveraged pathway to majority acquisition through Caro's underleveraged shell subsidiaries. A carve-out here. A side agreement there. Legalese so dry it'd crack your teeth, but inside it, power. She thought she was entering her new era. Turns out it was mine. By the time the elevator hit floor 9, I'd already deleted Kaya's welcome memo from my inbox. By floor 5, I'd unsynced my Muradyne calendar. And by the time those doors slid open to the lobby, sterile and humming with artificial peace, my phone gave the softest buzz. Calendar ping. Closing prep 3 o'clock p.m. at Caro Equity private room. I didn't smile. That would have been too easy. I just slipped the phone into my coat pocket and kept walking. Past the interns pretending not to gawk. Past the HR director who suddenly found his shoes very interesting. Past the security guard, Brent, who gave me the smallest, most respectful nod I'd gotten in 11 years. I pushed through the revolving doors, stepped into the wind, and slid into the back of a black Lincoln Town car like I'd done it 100 times. Because I had. But here's the part Kaya didn't know, and bless her little buzzword-riddled heart, she never would have seen it coming. 6 months ago, I started noticing something strange during our Q2 vendor audits. Muradyne's board had been sniffing around for an exit strategy, and Caro Equity had been circling like a well-dressed shark. Most people saw a standard acquisition on the horizon. I saw an opportunity hiding in the footnotes. Caro had approached Muradyne with a surface-level interest, something clean, cosmetic, safe. But I'd met with their managing partner, Davis Lang, 2 years earlier at a logistics roundtable in Denver. Back then, he joked over burnt hotel coffee that he'd never invest in Muradyne unless it came with an ops brain transplant, so I gave him mine. Quietly. First, I helped Caro restructure 3 of their underperforming logistics subsidiaries, on paper only. Nothing that would ping our compliance radar. Then, with those shells properly starched, we used them to create an acquisition arm that didn't look like Caro. It looked like 3 struggling vendors trying to merge for survival. Harmless. By the time our internal legal team saw the LOI documents, the ink was dry and the clauses buried. I'd spent 11 years writing the very playbook they never thought I'd use against them. And Kaya. She walked in thinking this was a chessboard. It was a mousetrap. Flashback to a rainy Tuesday 3 months ago. I'm in a beige conference room in Midtown. Davis Lang leans over the table, hands me a set of draft agreements, and says, "We can't move unless we know we have a steady hand to run the thing post acquisition. No offense, Rachel, but you don't scream private equity." I sipped my coffee. "Then let me write the clause that does." He raised an eyebrow. "You're serious, Davis? I've spent more time in Muradine's back corridors than the janitors. I know which servers host the contracts, who keeps shadow spreadsheets, and where the board keeps the real decisions. Hint, it's not the meeting room. You want this company to run post-acquisition? You want it to not explode the second you cut Kaya's leash?" He nodded slowly. "Then you'd be what? Operational partner?" I didn't blink. "Controlling equity partner." Silent until the call, then loud. That was the beginning. Now, back in the present, the town car pulls away from Muradine HQ. I don't look back. Let them hold their little all-hands celebrations, pop their sad welcome champagne, giggle about streamlined redundancy while they write over my name on the org chart. In 5 hours, that org chart's going to look very different. Because the thing about being underestimated is it's a kind of freedom. While they ignore you, you build, you maneuver, you position, and when they finally turn around, you own the floor they're standing on. Kaya's first strategy session was held in the glass conference room they renamed the Innovation Hive, because of course it was. The room I'd once used to hash out contingency protocols and risk models now smelled like dry erase fumes and empty ambition. She stood at the head of the table like she'd won a raffle, flanked by execs too scared to cough without permission. Her slides were a fever dream of buzzwords: synergy, disruption, agile reinvention. I saw a picture later. Someone from marketing snapped a shot and sent it to me with the caption, "She thinks the boardroom is Coachella." Kaya was glowing. Not with insight, but with that specific kind of delusion only people with zero skin in the game can afford. She talked about trimming the fat while her own onboarding still hadn't cleared IT security. She claimed Muradine needed a new voice after muzzling the only person who knew where the fuse boxes were buried. "Today is about rebirth," she declared. "We're shedding outdated structures, embracing velocity. It's time to build something leaner, louder, lateral." Lateral. She actually said lateral, as if leadership was a damn slip and slide. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. An HR manager, bless her anxious little heart, raised her hand. Should we coordinate our new strategy with the acquisition call?" I think the chairman moved it to tomorrow morning. Kaya smiled like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. "They'll follow my lead now." Just like that. The room nodded. Because that's what rooms do when the air gets thin and the boss is holding the oxygen tank. Meanwhile, I was 6 miles away, sipping ginger tea in a quiet boardroom 2 floors below Caro Equity's penthouse suite. It smelled like old money and newer intentions. Davis Lang, still in his charcoal suit with the cuffs perfectly starched, slid the final folder across the table. "Last one, Rachel. This signs over operational control through the carve-out network. You sure you want your name on the public side, Doc? We could keep you listed internal only, let someone else take the face role." I didn't answer right away. I flipped to the clause I wrote myself, buried in a service agreement signed by Muradine's own legal team 8 weeks prior. It tied the leveraged carve-out to a performance bond, triggered automatically once Caro hit a majority threshold. They'd hit that number 3 days ago. "I want my name on it," I said. "Kaya fired me in front of 10 people. I want her to recognize the name on the slide deck when it lights up her Zoom screen." Davis grinned. "You're cold. I'm prepared." He signed, then passed me the pen. As I scrawled my name, Rachel E. Connolly, across the bottom of the final document, a weight didn't lift. It settled. I wasn't done. I was in. I stood up, smoothed my blazer, and said, "Send the meeting packet to the chairman. Title it Transition Readiness Brief. Add Kaya's name under role pending review." Davis raised an eyebrow. "That's brutal." "No," I said, already walking out. "It's structural." Back at Muradine, Kaya was still basking in the glow of her own self-appointed coronation. I could imagine the internal Slack lighting up with her gifts, her mantras, her team polls about which corporate animal are you? Let her have it. The next time her camera lit up, it wouldn't be a celebration. It'd be a reckoning. And the woman she'd fired, she wasn't just back. She owned the ceiling above her head. Kaya's mood started to sour around 2:40 p.m. The shift was small at first. Her Slack responses got shorter, punctuation vanished, and someone from product noticed her pacing outside the second-floor atrium, muttering into her AirPods like she was trying to threaten a pizza tracker. The rumor mill didn't help. By late afternoon, internal comms had confirmed that the upcoming acquisition call, originally slated to be a victory parade for Kaya's new era, would now be chairman-led. No explanation. No agenda changes. Just a quiet reshuffling of who would be speaking and when. In a company like Muradine, where every memo had a spreadsheet and every spreadsheet had a blood type, that kind of deviation doesn't go unnoticed. Marketing flagged it. Legal flagged it. But when someone from investor relations gently asked if they should adjust Kaya's speaking time, she waved it off like a fly near her kombucha. "They'll adjust to my leadership style. Let the chairman have his welcome moment." Her tone was airy, but I guarantee her stomach wasn't. Because here's the thing about people like Kaya, they always mistake silence for approval. Meanwhile, 3 floors below Caro Equity's legal suite, I sat in a soundproof room with polished oak walls and contracts that had more zeros than Kaya had hours in the role. Davis Lang entered with a leather binder, his expression unreadable. "You sure you want to pull the trigger now?" I nodded. He slid the binder across the table. Inside, the final execution docs for the carve-out clause embedded in Service Agreement 014B, a clause that had been signed into existence nearly 6 months earlier under the guise of vendor reallocation. Buried in the language was a little gem, Clause 7.2. C, which triggered transfer of operational authority upon accumulation of leveraged majority through Caro's subsidiaries. A quiet clause. Cold. Boring, untouched by anyone except the person who drafted it, me. I read it one last time, not to check the language, I knew it by heart, but to savor it. I signed the first page, then the second, then the confirmation letter of controlling equity. By the third signature, I felt it not relief, not triumph, just an anchoring, like I had stepped fully into something I'd been rehearsing for years. I passed the folder back to Davis. "It's done," I said. He nodded and stood. "Then I'll forward the materials to the chairman for call prep. Your advisory title flips active at midnight. Controlling interest updates at 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern just before the call. You'll have visibility on the transition deck. It's already uploaded to the shared drive," I said. "Kaya's name is flagged in yellow, pending role evaluation." Davis gave a low whistle. "You didn't come to play, I came to finish." He chuckled and left. I stayed a moment longer. Let the silence soak in. No one to interrupt. No one to dilute the moment with applause or congratulations. I just sat there with the reality of it. After 11 years of holding things together in the background, keeping systems aligned, smoothing executive tantrums, cleaning up messes I didn't make, I was finally in a position not just to clean house, but to own it. Back at Murradine, Kaya was likely still strutting through the halls, trailing interns and middle managers like a motivational parade float, unaware that every door she passed already belonged to me. She'd fired me like I was a relic. Tomorrow, she'd log into a call and discover that her era had expired before it even began. The morning air felt electric, crackling with the kind of tension you don't name out loud but everyone tastes. It was acquisition day, which meant suits were ironed, mugs were refilled twice before 8 o'clock a.m., and every executive with a pulse was frantically grooming their LinkedIn like they might be offered a promotion or a no-fault exit package. Murradine's 11th floor conference suite, usually reserved for legal reviews and end-of-quarter yawns, had been converted into a full command center. Monitors, floral arrangements, catered breakfast no one touched. Kaya had requested a ring light and insisted on sitting in a chair 2 inches taller than everyone else's. Symbolism. I guess the call was set for 9 o'clock a.m. sharp. By 8:45, the participant list looked like a shareholder who's who. Investors from Zurich, partners from Seoul, acquisition attorneys from Boston, and every Murradine board member who could spell liability. Kaya took her seat front and center, face powdered, blazer crisp, the smile on her face straining under the weight of something she didn't quite understand. At 8:59, the chairman joined. He was old school, wore the same gray tie to every deal call since 2003, called people kid, and once ended a board meeting by quoting Sinatra. But there was nothing whimsical about his tone this morning. "Thank you all for joining," he said, his voice slow, deliberate. "Today marks a pivotal step in Murradine's evolution. We are finalizing controlling ownership transfer in accordance with our prior agreements and restructuring protocols." Kaya leaned slightly forward, fingers tented like she was preparing to soak in her praise. The chairman continued. "As of this morning, the controlling entity of Murradine Systems is Caro Equity, and I'm pleased to introduce their appointed operational partner effective immediately." A pause, a beat longer than necessary. Then the screen updated. Rachel E. Connolly, big, bold, uppercase. My face, live feed on, framed in the soft backlight of Caro's conference suite, perfectly centered beneath the words. Executive Transition Advisor Caro Equity. The screen caught Kaya mid-reaction, smile faltering, eyes darting, lips parting just slightly. She blinked once, twice, then just loud enough for someone near her mic to pick up. She whispered, "No, it can't be." The silence that followed wasn't technical, it was emotional. I spoke clearly without effect. "Thank you, Chairman Ellis, and thank you to all stakeholders and participants for your continued confidence. I look forward to facilitating a smooth operational transition as we align with Caro's restructuring objectives." I didn't look at Kaya directly. I didn't have to. In the side panel, chat messages began to appear. "Wait, Rachel, didn't she get fired last week? What's going on? Operational partner?" Kaya reached for her mouse like it might save her. Maybe she thought she could turn off the screen or rewind the moment. But you can't mute reality. Chairman Ellis returned, unbothered. "You'll all find a digital packet in your inbox outlining transition measures. The floor is now open for strategic remarks from Caro's new leadership." I clicked share screen. My deck loaded instantly, 42 slides, color-coded, time-stamped, and legally cleared. At the top of slide 1, Executive Transition Plan's second bullet, role evaluation under review. Kaya Levant, CEO, and just like that, after 11 years of invisibility, I became the most visible woman in the room. Thank you, Chairman, I said, letting each syllable land like it had its own clearance badge. As of this morning, all transfer protocols are in effect. Our goal is simple: stabilize, streamline, and align Muradyne with the operational integrity it's lacked during the transition window. I clicked once. The PDF loaded instantly into the meeting chat. No fanfare, no glitch, no buffer. Executive Transition Plan Caro Equity Implementation Protocol. The cover page alone was enough to make the temperature drop. Clean white background. The Caro logo in the top left corner. And in bold font below, status review, executive leadership roles immediate. And then 3 lines down, like a scalpel hidden in a velvet case. Name, Kaya Levant. Position, CEO interim role under review. Status, pending evaluation. Q4 compliance metrics incomplete. You could hear it, even across a virtual meeting with 64 participants, keyboards clacking, microphones being fumbled with, someone breathing sharply through their nose. The live chat erupted in a kind of slow-motion panic. Is that real? Pending review. Wasn't she just confirmed CEO last week? Rachel is back? Holy shit, Kaya didn't speak. Her square on the screen stayed frozen, face blank and unmoving, cursor hovering over God knows what, probably the leave meeting button she was too stunned to click. Her expression was the facial equivalent of blue screen error, all confidence drained, every calculation she'd made scrambled into static. I continued like I was reading off grocery items. Slide 2 details the current division alignments. You'll see that risk and compliance will now report directly to Caro's advisory board, with restructuring oversight under myself. Slide 3 includes performance summaries by department, which we'll be using to evaluate retention packages and realign leadership bandwidth. Slide 4? Slide 4 was where the oxygen left the room. C-suite performance index forecasted adjustments, color-coded, time-stamped, metrics aligned. Beside Kaya's name, leadership viability insufficient, next line, strategic direction clarity non-determinate, next line, retention rating unfavorable. It was brutal, but it was methodical, it was clean, and it was signed off by 3 legal entities, including Muradyne's own counsel. Because the clause they'd all missed, clause 7.2c, wasn't buried in legalese. It was sitting in a document they approved, I knew, because I'd drafted it, reviewed it, filed it, and bookmarked it with a silent kind of vengeance. Further questions, I said, can be directed to Caro's internal review team. We'll be hosting breakout sessions post-call to address transition logistics. I recommend prioritizing compliance documentation and leadership disclosures as outlined in your emailed packet. Kaya finally unmuted. A breath. Then, this is a misunderstanding. I wasn't informed of any transition vote, or Chairman Ellis cut in, voice as soft as it was lethal. Kaya, please hold your comments until the agenda concludes. She froze. Her mouth hung open like someone had hit pause mid-sentence. I didn't turn off my camera. I let her look. Let her see the woman she fired 3 days ago. The woman she dismissed in front of her peers. A woman who'd spent a decade wiring the company's internal scaffolding so tightly that even a single arrogant misstep, her misstep, could bring the whole thing down. Let's move on, I said. Next slide. My tone never shifted. My breathing never changed. I delivered Kaya's professional eulogy in bulleted points and budget pivots. No shouting, no theatrics, just quiet procedural annihilation, and she couldn't do a damn thing about it. By 9:43 a.m., the word confirmed had been said 7 times, each one striking like a gavel in a courtroom. Kaya didn't even realize she'd been summoned to. The legal representative from Caro's M and a counsel, a woman named Sadie Benton who looked like she flossed with red tape, clicked her mic on and read with surgical calm. As of 8 a.m. Eastern this morning, Caro Equity completed its acquisition of a controlling interest in Muradyne Systems via instrumented carve-out transfer. The documentation has been verified, notarized, and uploaded to the board's secured repository. All signatures match, compliance is intact, and the operational partner assigned by Caro is now listed with full executive oversight authority under the revised Leadership Transition Clause, referred to Appendix 6. Translation: wasn't just in the room, I was the room, and the silence that followed didn't feel like confusion. It felt like reverence. Then came the first ping, congrats Rachel, about damn time. Mark Chen, CFO board member, followed by, looking forward to your guidance moving forward. L. Grace, Strategic Ops Committee, welcome back, we missed your voice. Elliot Rains, Investor Liaison, each one landed in the public chat, time-stamped and glowing like little digital daggers. I didn't smile, I didn't nod, I just said thank you and moved on to the next section of the deck. Kaya tried, she really did. At 9:49 her mic flickered on again. There was a hitch in her voice, subtle but unmistakable. The kind that happens when someone's throat tightens around too much pride and not enough leverage. I have some concerns about how this transition was communicated. I believe there are misunderstandings that Chairman Ellis interrupted with the grace of a man who's done this dance far too many times. Kaya, he said, voice even, please remain muted until we complete the agenda. Her mic clicked off mid-sentence. It was brutal, surgical, almost cruel, but also policy. I didn't look at her, not once. She wasn't the audience anymore. She was an item, a bullet point. I walked the board through the integration timeline, mentioned how departmental assessments would begin the following Monday, referenced the upcoming compliance audit that had conveniently been pushed twice during Kaya's honeymoon tour of corporate transformation. No one questioned it. No one defended her. She was CEO on paper, sure, but that paper was currently being archived with the label outdated role structure do not reference. Every line of code I'd written into those contracts, every dull clause no one read, every signature quietly obtained in conference rooms with too much air conditioning and too little coffee, it had all come home to roost. And now I stood exactly where Kaya never thought I'd be. Not fired, not forgotten, but elevated. Elevated in silence, supported by ink, and confirmed by people whose names carried more weight than any one rebranding campaign ever could. By the time we wrapped the call, the chairman's closing remarks were dry but final. We appreciate everyone's time. All action items will be distributed by Rachel's team. This meeting is adjourned, cameras flicked off. Kaya's disappeared without ceremony. And me? I sat back, exhaled once, and looked out the floor-ceiling window at a city that hadn't changed, but I had. I didn't need to look at her. She'd already seen enough. They say when a person knows they've lost, their footsteps change. They get slower. Not heavier, slower, like the body is trying to drag the moment out before it fully crashes down. That's how Kaya walked into the room. Same glass walls she once strutted past like they were mirrors made just for her. Same oak conference table she'd kicked me out of, claiming we needed a new tone at the top. Now, she stepped in like she was approaching a surgical table. I was already there, chair pulled out, tablet in front of me, leather folder to my left, and a stillness so loud it made the HVAC hum sound like applause. She sat across from me, stiff, defensive, the way a deer might sit if it knew the hunter was there out of courtesy. Kaya, I began, my voice measured like I was reciting minutes from a meeting she'd forgotten to attend. Thanks for making the time. I didn't have a choice, she said, and even now her tone fought to maintain some echo of control. No, I agreed. You didn't. She opened her mouth, but I continued before she could reload. You'll remain on payroll through Friday. After that, you'll be offered a transition role, non-executive advisory capacity, remote limited visibility. Her eyes widened. Excuse me? You'll retain access to your benefits for 90 days. NDA clauses remain in effect. All statements moving forward will refer to your strategic consulting partnership during organizational realignment. She blinked, as if the words themselves were surreal. You're firing me. No, I said, you've already been removed. I slid the leather folder across the table. She opened it. Inside, a single page, a copy of her own executive employment agreement. Clause 14.2, second paragraph, highlighted in yellow. Termination may be executed at the sole discretion of the controlling ownership entity, without cause or prior notice, upon realignment of strategic direction or change in operational oversight. Her mouth opened. No sound came out, just a flush rising across her cheekbones like heat with nowhere to go. This isn't fair, she managed. You were brought in under a different structure, I interrupted, calm and clean. That structure no longer exists. She stared at the document like it might vanish if she blinked fast enough. I didn't even know Caro had that kind of power. You didn't read your contract. Silence. I'm not the villain here, she said finally. I never said you were, I replied, but that chair you sat in? It doesn't care about villains or heroes. It only cares who read the fine print. She looked down at the page again, but it didn't change. Contracts rarely do when you're on the wrong side of them. I stood up, not fast, not with flourish, just the kind of motion that says this part is over. I'll have HR prepare your offboarding package. You'll receive a call by noon. You're not required to respond. She didn't follow me with her eyes, didn't say goodbye, didn't ask for reconsideration because she knew I didn't reclaim my power by shouting or begging or scheming. I reclaimed it by understanding exactly what she never bothered to read. And now, I wasn't just holding the pen. I was the clause. 1 week later, the halls of Murradine were quieter. Not because anything had collapsed, far from it. The company was functioning like a well-oiled circuit board. Departments were calmer. Meetings started on time. And people smiled more, the kind of small smiles you give when the storm's passed and you're just grateful your name wasn't in the blast radius. The change started with the website. No announcement. No big news banner. Just a clean update on the leadership page. Rachel Connolly, Executive Chair, Strategic Oversight. No acting. No interim, just final, like it had always been there, like the universe had course-corrected. Kaya's name, gone, not buried, not hidden on some former leadership page. Gone, wiped like a temp login. Her badge had deactivated the Friday prior, security had buzzed her on the 6th floor, let her up manually, and escorted her to HR without ever saying a word. She didn't come back down through the front. Word spread quickly. The rebrand slides were pulled, her Slack account archived, the photos from the New Era welcome event quietly removed from the drive. Even the custom CEO Vision mugs in the break room had disappeared, like they'd melted in the dishwasher of fate. But none of that mattered to me now. because I had one last thing to do. The CEO's office still sat at the end of the executive corridor. Glass door, sleek wood paneling. The potted plant Kaya insisted be replaced with a white orchid was already drooping from neglect. I didn't enter, didn't need to. That room had never held the power, it just borrowed it. I walked past it, heels steady, the quiet click of each step echoing off polished concrete and whispered apologies no one dared voice aloud. At the end of the hallway, the boardroom, the same room where I'd been fired. The same table where Kaya had looked down at me and said, "Your time is over," like she was reading from a fortune cookie dipped in cruelty. I pushed open the door. Inside, it was empty except for the hum of the overhead light and the faint scent of polished wood. The chair she'd used, the one she'd insisted be raised 2 inches taller than the others, still sat at the head of the table. I paused for a second, just a second, not for sentiment, not for vengeance, but to acknowledge what it meant. Then I walked over, placed my tablet on the surface, and pulled the chair back with one hand. Sat down. No applause, no violin swell. Just the quiet creak of leather and a single line whispered in the back of my mind, so cold and clean it might as well have been chiseled in the boardroom wall. Funny thing about timing, it only runs out when you don't own the clock. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.